In today's episode of Inside the Artist, renowned author and poet Emiliano Martin talks about his new book, Over Clouds of Cotton, and reads selected poems for us, with your host, John J. Rupert, January 19, 2023. Welcome to another issue of Inside the Artist with your host, John J. Rupert. Today is January 19, 2023, and we're sitting down with everyone's favorite poet, artist, and author, Emiliano Martin. First of all, Happy New Year to you, Mr. Martin.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Oh, and by the way, Happy New Year to all of our viewers out there, too.
Absolutely.
We here at Inside the Artist have came here today because the new year brings new things. And one of the new things it's brought us is a new book from you. Please tell us about the book.
Oh, it is a book of poetry. As you know by now, I write a lot of poetry. And the book I have written, I have published this year, about a week ago. It is called Over Clouds of Cotton. And it is a book of poetry of about 97 poems, all written in English, and something I am very proud of.
How did you choose the title?
The title is the title of one of the poems. It took me a long time to decide what title I was going to use because I can never make up my mind until the very end. So, since the theme of the book, in many poems, I have mentioned the word cotton and clouds and sky and so on and so forth. So, I thought it was convenient to use the title of Over Clouds of Cotton.
Did you have any other titles in mind?
Oh yes, I had about 5 titles on and off, but I decided to go with the title of one of the poems, just to be consistent with other books I have written.
I'm sure your fans would like to hear a few samples from your new book. Care to share with us?
Oh yes, I'll be delighted. Let's see. I got so many. I got 97 to choose from. Wake up call. Walking over clouds of cotton appears to make the trip easier. But when the wake up call is on time, the fall shall feel breezier than we ever expected, and that is all inevitable.
You want to share another one?
I can keep going and reading over and over and over. Dismal is the name of this poem. On dismal days, the fog is dense. I walk through it under suspense. I weave a timid attitude right over the cloth of my thoughts. With my own words, I tell it all, and without signs of remorse or false pretense, I move along on dismal days. That was my moody philosophical mood.
How hard or easy is your refining, as us writers say, I can make it better process?
Well, refining of the writings is essential for any writer, any poet. In my case, I keep changing continuously until I am sort of satisfied. I'm never satisfied 100% because there is always room for improvement, as they say. But the refining of a poem is something that has to be considered very seriously by any writer.
Do you find it easy or is it hard?
It is harder than we think, because to write is easy. Anybody can write. Pick up a pencil, pick up a piece of paper, think of something and put it down. To write is easy, but to write good, to make it of quality, is hard. And that takes a lot of practicing and revising.
When you're writing your poems or your books, do you have any sounding boards for your work, like someone you bounce the poems off while you're working on them?
I used to do it much more than I do it lately. Lately, I just write for myself. I don't check with anybody. But I used to check with people I used to know, and sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. Because in life, I found that people not necessarily copy your work, but you give them juice to think about it. And before your work comes out, somebody else have not necessarily copy your substance, your work, but base his or her work on what you have already done. So I try to be cautious about sending my work out prior to publishing. However, a second opinion can be good. From people we know, people we trust, I recommend it because somebody else's opinion is good. It's going to help us out in the long run. But if that opinion is not necessarily used in an honest venue, we have a problem.
Do you have a favorite poem in this book of yours?
A favorite poem. I do like all the poems I write. There is poetry for an author is like children in a family. You love them all. You don't want to take sides with one or the other. But to answer your question, I can pick up a poem. The way I am. I am the witness of my actions and the guardian of my faults. Yet, in weird situations, I can be out of control. I can also be forgotten, just like the spring snow. As much as I could be searching the path of a peaceful dove. It's not my favorite poem, but it is something that describes my personality at times.
Care to share a few more?
Yes. Light and hope. Regardless of being wrong, anytime we see the light, there is a chance to find hope.
Oh, wow. That's a very positive one.
Well, sometimes I try.
What projects are you currently working on now?
Oh dear. I'm always working on something. Lately, I want to pursue the finishing of a manuscript, which is going to be a book of poetry, bilingual poetry. One page will be in English, another page will be in Spanish. And I translate myself from one language to the other. It's going to take me some time because of the refining you've mentioned earlier. I have done the translation, now I have to make it work in verse, and then I have to polish it up. So it's going to take me some time, but that is a project I'm working on right now.
I know you mentioned before to us in one of our previous interviews that when you do the translation, sometimes it's hard because when you go from English to Spanish or Spanish to English, the words don't always match up.
Yeah, they don't match up, and it's very difficult to translate. In verse, it's even worse because not everybody can write verse. I'm not saying that because we write poetry, we are better or worse than anybody else, but it's very difficult. Translations in poetry are very difficult, and even though translations can be done beautifully, and they have been done beautiful, I mean, there are beautiful translations all over the world. As I said in my manuscript, every translator is a little bit of a traitor. So we have to be careful.
Is one way easier than the other, English to Spanish or Spanish to English?
Verse is feelings, and feelings are human. So if your frame of mind is in the English mode, it comes out in English, easy. If the frame of mind is in Spanish, it comes out in Spanish, easy. But the transfer of one language to the other is not easy, because now there are compromises to make from one to the other or from the other to one. So it is it's a complicated issue. It can be done. It has been done beautifully by a lot of translators that were great people as poets and as translators. And I'm just having fun with it.
And of course, the grammar is completely different between both styles.
Completely. Thank God the alphabet is the same. Because imagine with one of these alphabets from China, Japan, or they use signs, and oh my God.
For those who've never published a book but are interested in it, please let us know how it feels when you finish a book and send it off to the publisher. How does that feel once it's done?
Oh, it's a great feeling. It is something that we've been working on for quite some time, and sometimes we want to quit, we want to stop it, or we want to throw it away, and we continue doing it because we enjoy it. It's not easy, but we keep at it, we keep up the pace, and at the end, when the final product is done, is a beautiful feeling. Finally, when it is in the shop, as I call it, when the book is under production and we see a proof copy, it's like something like that, and we look at it and we can touch it, and it's a nice feeling. It's definitely something very nice.
Do you remember the first book you ever had published?
Yes, a long time ago. It was in a book form. It was The Legacy of a Poet, and I was so proud at that time. Now I read it and it's nice, but I was too young.
How long did it take you to write it?
That one, probably about 5-6 years.
Oh.
One of the reasons it took me that long is because I did not think of myself as a poet writing books. I was simply writing poems on and off. And eventually I got to the point where I got so many and I decided to put them in a book. That was not my plan. In my mind, it never crossed my mind that I was going to be a poet publishing books. It happened, and that took me to another level, and ever since I have not stopped, and I'm going back a long time ago.
How many have you published over the years, off the top of your head?
Probably 17, 18 books. Believe me, I don't mean to be sarcastic, but I do not remember the exact numbers because I'm
You write so much, yeah.
doing something.
Which is great. Do you have any New Year plans you'd like to share with your fans? Any upcoming getaways?
Yes, indeed. It is a necessity to get out, not to get lost, but to go out for a couple of days or a week or whatever, and try to change the pace, because after the COVID period of time, we've been suffering, not experiencing, suffering. I don't have to tell anybody how bad these years now have been for all of us. We need to get away for some time.
So you think it's good for writers once in a while just to get up and get away from everything?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You have to get away from your environment for a couple of days, for a week, for whatever, just to see where you were at or what you are doing. Because as long as we stay in the same location, not going anywhere, not seeing anybody, you know, we cannot think. We think inside the box, and the box getting smaller, smaller, smaller. We have to get out.
We here at Inside the Artist always receive emails and comments asking for advice from you about how to go about having books published. Do you care to share some advice for your fans?
If you write, Keep on writing. If you have the opportunity to share your poetry with groups of poetry, clubs, libraries, so on and so forth, do it. And if you can get in touch with the publisher, try to send some material, see if there is any luck. There are there magazines and pamphlets and a lot of places where you can expose your poetry. And I recommend people who are into poetry to share it with others.
And speaking of published books, would you care to share some more poems off your new book, Over Clouds of Cotton?
Absolutely, I'll be delighted. This one. For people often ignore. So much has been learned in science. So much we can be proud of. Yet, there are things we do not know, while putting aside the ability to see hunger and poverty for what they are. 2 issues around the globe, hanging in plain view for centuries, but found unnoticed by many who do not give a damn after all.
Care to share another one?
I'll be delighted, John. You know, we poets, once we get started reading our own material, we cannot stop.
Well, the good thing is, I said, when we get the emails and the comments, a lot of aspiring poets and current poets take advice from you, they listen to it, and they watch you and listen to how you read, and it gives them motivation to do it themselves.
I'm glad to hear that. Tunic. The tunic of tragedy wraps human pain in disarray, but only faith along an effort, accompanied with bravery, could provide a slow recovery and a positive outcome. No guarantees though, as much as we ought to remain patiently in line, some luck will probably intervene in life.
Nice. And speaking of your fans, what would you like to say to your fans out there watching this right now?
Oh, I do appreciate very much that you people are there with patience and bravery to put up with me.
Where can this book, as well as your other titles, be purchased at? Where can they find it at?
The book, in this particular case, Over Clouds of Cotton, can be found in the internet. If you look for this title by Emiliano Martin, you can find it in lulu.com, who happens to be the publisher. You can find it in Barnes & Noble. You can find it in Amazon. I found out recently that even Walmart offers the book online. To me, it's a surprise. I don't know why, but there are other internet outlets available, even in Germany. As a matter of fact, I know of somebody in Germany who bought 2 books like this.
Oh, wow.
This week. Somebody bought a book and somebody else bought a book, and I found that out through the publisher that sent me a list of. And this is in Germany, that I'm sure they speak German, and in this case English also, because they put 2 books in Germany. The book is offered all over the internet, so it's available. And
they can just simply Google your name, Emiliano Martin, poet or poetry, and then all your other books will come up.
Yes, that's another way to do it. The ISBN number is also very important. The number of the ISBN is 9781387327195, and that is an international number that can be found on any library in the world. Not just for my book, but for any book that is published legally.
Great. Before we go, we'd like to hear one more poem if you'd like to give it to us.
One more poem.
We'd appreciate it.
You're very kind.
What is the last poem in the book, actually?
The last poem of
That's
the
why I
book.
always wanted to ask a published writer. How do you choose the last poem?
In my case, it is the last poem I wrote in the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the publisher have the right to move things around and put this one first in the middle of the... So it depends on the publisher. In my case, I wrote a poem and I closed the manuscript and I sent it to the bookshop. Not because of any particular reason, it's because it is the last poem I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I believe it is a poem I have already read, which under the name The Way I Am. I will read it again if you don't mind.
Did you read the first one? And what makes you choose the first poem in a book?
I don't remember, but you asked me to read a poem out of a book, and I opened the pages, and
Yeah,
here I
we'll
am.
listen to it again. That'd be great.
Okay, The Way I Am.
And that's the last one in the book, correct?
Yes, and it is the last one I wrote in the manuscript. It is when I wrote the poem, I decided,
Mm-hmm. That's
that's
it.
it. I'm going to send it out to a
And how
publisher.
many pages again did you say were in the book?
There are about 90, 93, 97.
Oh wow, it's a nice number,
Yeah,
97.
97 pages. And the book has some graphics that I have drawn myself.
Oh wow.
Here I have a little guy walking over a cloud. And there are other decorations or designs.
Wow, so that's in the book as well.
You see the beach and the waves and the clouds up in the sky, and
Yeah, because like I said before, when we opened it up, we know you're an artist as well.
well,
So we noticed you're starting to incorporate more and more of your own artwork in your poetry, which is nice.
I like drafting. I like drawings. And actually, you did mention the last poem of the book, which is where I close the manuscript. People may see that at the end,
That's a seagull.
At the bottom, I have a little seagull.
Oh, wow.
And it's also my art. But anyway, going back to the poem, the last poem of the book, The Way I Am. I'm the witness of my actions and the guardian of my faults. Yet, in weird situations, I can be out of control. I can also be forgotten, just like the spring snow. And as much as I could be searching the path of a peaceful dove.
Pretty.
And like I said, at that time I decided that's
That was it, yeah.
The manuscript is done. Hopefully it will be a book.
Then what would happen, like, say, 2 days later, you decided to write another one? Would you do it or just wait for the next book?
I wait for the next book because I can go on and on and on. I mean, there is somebody said one day that a book is never complete to the satisfaction of the writer. The book is complete when the deadline of publishing is in front of the calendar. Somebody decides by such a day, we're going in. No more additions, no more. Sometimes additions or deletions happen because life, nothing is in concrete. But basically, the book is done when there is a date in the calendar, and the book's done. For a writer, especially in novel, in poetry, is you have to think about another poem. But when writers write a novel, they can go on and on. It never ends until the writer decides, okay, this is going to be the end, to the satisfaction of some people, or dissatisfaction of, or disappointment of others. But there is a date in the calendar, and you have to follow it. That's when the book is done.
I know a lot of your fans send us questions and comments, and one of the questions, which I don't think I've ever asked you, are you ever interested in doing audiobooks with your own books? Because they love the way you read.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I am interested. in doing audio. I do not have the proper equipment or the sound room where I can do a good recording, quality recording. Although I have done recordings in a professional studio, that's different. And there was a time of my life that I even did radio. That was a long time ago when I was younger. I did some radio in two radio stations, one in Jenkintown and another one in, near Valley Forge. I forgot the name of the town. But
That's nice. So you would be interested if someone was to contact us and say, hey, we have the studio, call them up?
That's the way to do it. A good recording has to be good. In a good recording studio, you have to have good microphones, perfect sound. Sound meaning acoustic.
Plus no distractions.
You don't want distractions. You don't want noise in the street. You're professional.
Birds flying by. Yeah. Unless it's a poem about a bird, then it'll be perfect.
I can do a recording with my tape recorder, which is a piece of crack.
Yeah.
It's shameful. I wouldn't go professional with something like that. But to answer your question, I love doing recording.
So if anybody out here is watching this video and you know a studio that's looking for a great artist, contact us, send us an email, send us a message on our YouTube channel. Mr. Martin, once again, we want to thank you for letting us into your home and your never-ending creative world. We look forward to upcoming book releases and new interviews with you. Happy New Year, my friend, and we'll see you soon.
Happy New Year, and don't forget to buy my book.
Again, what's the name of the book?
Over Clouds of Cotton.
You heard it here. Go out and buy the book.
Thank
you, sir. Inside the Artist wishes to thank our viewers for their continued support and our special guest today, renowned author, poet, and artist Emiliano Martin. To purchase his wonderful books, please visit lulu.com, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, or simply search Emiliano Martin on the web. This has been recorded, directed, produced, and hosted by John J. Rupert, January 19th, 2023. Don't forget to hit subscribe to see all of our interviews and other content on this channel. Be safe and be creative.